Betrayal leaves a stain that's notoriously difficult to scrub out of the carpet, especially when the knife is wielded by someone you love. It took me 10 brutal, grueling years to forge a flawless professional reputation. Out of sheer boredom, my sister needed only 10 minutes to try and tear it to shreds. Consider this a warning to watch your back even under your own roof. The smell of Santal 33 and stale Prosecco hit me the second I unlocked my front door. It was Tuesday, 3 in the afternoon, and my sister was still asleep. Her name is Vanessa. She is 28 years old, possesses the survival instincts of a pampered house cat, and has spent her entire adult life failing upwards on the cushion of my parents' relentless enabling. Currently, she was occupying my guest room, having declared a mental health sabbatical after her fiancé caught her sleeping with his business partner. My mother, crying over the phone from her suburban kitchen 2 states away, had begged me to take Vanessa in. She just needs a quiet place to heal, Chloe. You have that big apartment in the city. Family takes care of family. Family takes care of family. That was the mantra. It translated roughly to, Chloe works 80-hour weeks to pay the bills, and Vanessa uses Chloe's credit card to buy organic spirulina smoothies. I dropped my briefcase by the console table. The leather handle was damp with my own sweat. I was an independent fine arts and antiquities appraiser. My job was to walk into the homes of dead billionaires, catalog their hoard of jewelry, paintings, and historical artifacts, and assign a number to their legacy before it went to auction. My entire career rested on a single fragile pillar: absolute, unshakable trust. One whisper of impropriety, one missing teaspoon, and the elite auction houses would blacklist me before breakfast. I walked into the kitchen. The granite countertops were littered with avocado rinds, an empty bottle of my good Sancerre, and a pile of mail Vanessa had ripped open and abandoned. "Vanessa," I called out, my voice flat. A groan drifted from the guest room. A minute later, she shuffled out wearing my silk robe, her blonde hair artfully tousled. She looked like a tragic heroine in an indie film. I looked like a woman who had just spent 6 hours arguing with a customs agent over the provenance of a rusted Byzantine coin. "You're home early," she mumbled, rubbing an eye. She didn't look at the mess she'd made. She never did. "I have the Rothberg collection arriving at 6, I said, opening the fridge to find she had eaten the leftover pad thai I'd been fantasizing about since noon. I needed to prep the office. "I told you this yesterday. I told you I need the apartment spotless and quiet." Vanessa rolled her eyes, leaning against the doorframe. "God, you're always so stressed, Chloe. It's just old stuff. It's not like you're curing cancer." "No. I'm just paying the mortgage you're currently sleeping under," I snapped, immediately regretting it. Fighting with Vanessa was like wrestling a pig in mud. After a while, you realize the pig enjoys it. She let out a dramatic, victimized sigh. "Mom warned me you were getting bitter. I'm going through a trauma, Chloe. But fine, I'll stay out of your way. I'll just go be invisible." She retreated to the guest room, slamming the door just hard enough to make the framed vintage posters in the hallway rattle. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Mom. "Be gentle with your sister today. She sounded so fragile on the phone. Love you." I locked my phone, tossing it onto the counter. I didn't have time to be angry. I had to prepare the safe. My home office was a fortress. Because I occasionally held high-value items overnight before armored transport arrived the next morning, my insurance agency mandated military-grade security. I had a Class 3 TL30 safe bolted to the concrete floor. The windows were reinforced glass. But more importantly, the underwriters required 24/7 visual monitoring of the safe whenever an asset valued over $1 million was in my custody. 2 weeks ago, my primary security contractor, a guy named Mike who smelled perpetually of peppermint and soldering iron, had come in to upgrade the system. He'd installed a new hyper-discreet camera directly inside the smoke detector, pointing straight down at the safe. It recorded directly to an encrypted cloud server. He also put a secondary micro camera in the air vent facing the office door. Nobody knows they're there unless they're looking for the lens glare with a flashlight. Mike had grunted, packing up his tools. Insurance will love it. Gives them a 4K view of anyone trying to mess with your livelihood. I didn't tell Vanessa about the cameras. It wasn't to trick her. It just wasn't her business. My office was strictly off limits anyway. The door had a biometric lock. At 6 p.m. precisely, the armored truck arrived downstairs. I signed a small mountain of paperwork and carried a nondescript steel lockbox up the freight elevator. Inside that box was the Rothberg sapphire. It was a 40-carat, unheated Ceylon sapphire set in a platinum and diamond brooch, commissioned in the 1920s. Its estimated auction reserve was $3.2 million. Holding it in my gloved hands, I felt the familiar, heavy thrill of proximity to history. It was beautiful, cold, and terrifyingly valuable. I placed the velvet box inside the safe, spun the dial, locked the bolts, and activated the biometric seal. A green light blinked on the panel. Secure. When I stepped out of the office, I found Vanessa standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall. She was holding a glass of water, watching me. The hallway was shadowed, and her eyes looked dark, unreadable. "Heavy breathing over dusty rocks again?" she asked. Her tone was light, but the corners of her mouth were tight. "Just finishing up," I said, making sure the office door clicked shut behind me. "It's secure." "Must be nice," she murmured, taking a sip of her water. "Having things people actually want." I frowned, caught off guard by the sheer bitterness in her voice. What is that supposed to mean? Vanessa offered a vacant, plastic smile. "Nothing, Chloe. Just admiring your perfect, predictable little life." She turned and walked back into her room. I stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, a sudden cold knot tightening in the pit of my stomach. The following day was an agonizing exercise in patience. The transport crew was scheduled to pick up the sapphire at 8 a.m. on Thursday, which meant I had to endure 36 hours of Vanessa circling my apartment like a bored shark while I tried to finalize the provenance paperwork. Things started getting weird on Wednesday afternoon. I was at the kitchen island, typing up the appraisal report, when I noticed my keys were missing. I always drop them in the ceramic bowl by the door. Always. It's muscle memory. I spent 20 minutes tearing apart my living room before I found them sitting on the edge of the bathroom sink. "Did you move my keys?" I asked Vanessa, who was painting her toenails on the sofa. She didn't look up. "Why would I touch your keys? You probably just forgot where you put them. You're working too hard. You're losing your mind." I let it go. An hour later, I went into my bedroom to grab a charger and found my closet door ajar. A gym bag I hadn't used in months was sitting on the bed, half unzipped. "Vanessa," I yelled, my patience evaporating. She sauntered into the hallway. "What? Why is my gym bag on the bed? Were you in my room?" She crossed her arms, looking deeply offended. "I was looking for a fresh towel. God, you are so paranoid. Do you think I want to steal your sweaty sports bras? Calm down." She turned away, muttering psycho just loud enough for me to hear. I stood looking at the gym bag. It felt wrong. The air in the apartment felt heavy, charged with a strange, passive-aggressive electricity. I zipped the bag up, shoved it back onto the top shelf of the closet, and locked my bedroom door. That evening, my father called. I put him on speaker while I chopped vegetables for a salad I knew Vanessa wouldn't eat. "How's your sister holding up?" Dad asked. His voice was warm, a little gravelly. "She's fine, Dad. She's mostly sleeping and watching reality TV. Be a good host, Chloe. She's going through a lot. Actually, she called your mother earlier. She said you've been snapping at her. Said you're acting incredibly stressed about money. Is business okay?" My knife stopped mid-chop. I stared at the cutting board. "Stressed about money? Dad, I just landed the Rothberg estate. I'm having my best quarter ever." "Well, that's not what she said," Dad replied, his tone shifting into that gentle, patronizing gear he used when he thought I was hiding something. "She said you were pacing around, talking to yourself about debt. Look, if you need a short-term loan..." "Dad, I don't need a loan. I have zero debt. Why would Vanessa say that?" A heavy sigh crackled through the speaker. "She's just worried about you, sweetheart. Don't take it the wrong way. Just take care of each other." I hung up, my hands shaking slightly. I walked out into the living room. Vanessa was curled up on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. "Why did you tell Mom and Dad I was having money problems?" I asked, keeping my voice dangerously low. She didn't flinch. She just slowly lowered her phone and looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Because you are, Chloe. I saw that past due notice on the counter. I'm just worried about you." "That was a medical bill that got routed to the wrong insurance network," I said, my voice rising. "It was for $60. I paid it yesterday." Okay, geez. Don't bite my head off," she said, holding her hands up in mock surrender. "I was just trying to look out for you. Since you're clearly carrying so much on your shoulders, must be tempting, surrounded by all those millions of dollars every day, knowing none of it is yours." The comment hung in the air, toxic and thick. "Stay away from my office," I said, every syllable a threat. "Stay away from my things. Tomorrow morning when the transport leaves, we are having a serious conversation about when you're moving out." Vanessa smiled. It was a small, sharp thing that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure, Chloe. Whatever you say." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sirens of the city. I kept thinking about her smile. I kept thinking about the gym bag. At 3 a.m., I got out of bed, walked down the hall, and checked the biometric lock on the office door. The light was solid red, locked. I went back to bed, but my heart was hammering a steady rhythm of panic against my ribs. I should have kicked her out right then. It is the greatest regret of my life that I didn't. Thursday morning, 7 a.m. I woke up feeling like I'd chewed on tin foil. I made a pot of black coffee, showered, and put on a charcoal suit. The transport company was due in exactly 1 hour. I needed to open the safe, do a final visual inspection of the sapphire, and sign the transfer logs. The apartment was dead quiet. Vanessa's door was shut. I walked to the office. I pressed my thumb to the scanner. The lock clicked, the light turned green, and I pushed the door open. The room was cold. The window blind was drawn, and the heavy steel door of the Class 3 safe was hanging wide open. My brain refused to process it. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the empty cavern of the safe. The velvet box was gone. The lockbox was gone. "No," I whispered. I stumbled forward, dropping to my knees on the hardwood floor. I checked the safe. Empty. I checked underneath the desk. Nothing. The blood drained from my face, leaving my skin feeling tight and cold. My chest constricted so violently I couldn't pull in a breath. $3.2 million. The Rothberg sapphire. Gone. I had been ruined. Instantly. Irrevocably. I didn't scream. Panic, that absolute, doesn't make a sound. It just paralyzes you. I scrambled for my phone in my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it twice before I managed to dial 911. "Police," I choked out to the dispatcher. "I've been robbed. A high-value asset. Please hurry." I ran out of the office and hammered my fists against Vanessa's door. "Vanessa, wake up. Get out here." She opened the door a minute later, rubbing her eyes, looking genuinely annoyed. "What is wrong with you?" "The safe is open," I yelled, my voice breaking. "The sapphire is gone. Did you hear anything last night? Did someone break in?" Vanessa's expression shifted. The annoyance melted away, replaced by a look of profound theatrical shock. "Oh my God, Chloe, what do you mean it's gone? How could it be gone?" "I don't know." I paced the hallway, dragging my hands through my hair. The door was locked. The biometric scanner was on. Someone had to have my fingerprint to open the door, and the combination to the safe. Vanessa put a hand over her mouth. "Chloe, you're the only one who has those." I stopped pacing. I looked at her. Her eyes were wide, but there was a stillness in her posture that felt profoundly wrong. 20 minutes later, my apartment was crawling with uniformed officers. Detective Baker, a tall, exhausted-looking man in a rumpled brown suit, was standing in my kitchen, writing in a small notepad. "No signs of forced entry on the front door," Baker said, not looking up. No signs of forced entry on the office door. No damage to the safe. Miss, safes like that don't just pop open because you ask them nicely. I know, I said, my voice trembling. I locked it. I know I locked it. Baker finally looked up. His eyes were flat, assessing. Who else lives here? Just me. And my sister, she's visiting. Baker gestured to his partner, a younger officer who was standing near the hallway. Go talk to the sister. I sat at the kitchen island, staring at my cold coffee. My career was flashing before my eyes. The lawsuit from the Rothberg estate would bankrupt me. The criminal charges would put me in prison. From the living room, I could hear Vanessa talking to the younger officer. Her voice was pitched, perfectly trembling, hesitant, the voice of a girl trying to protect a loved one but breaking under the weight of the truth. I shouldn't say. Vanessa's voice drifted into the kitchen. I don't want to get her in trouble. Miss, a $3 million piece of jewelry is missing, the officer said firmly. You need to tell us everything. She's just been so desperate, Vanessa cried softly. She's drowning in debt. She told me last night she didn't know how she was going to survive. I heard her crying in her room. And then I woke up around 4 a.m. to get water, and I saw her coming out of the office. She looked terrified. She had a bag with her. My heart stopped. I stood up so fast my stool crashed to the floor. That's a lie, I screamed, lunging toward the living room. You're lying. I didn't leave my room. Detective Baker stepped into my path, his hand resting casually on his belt. Easy, Miss Davis. Take a step back. She's lying to you, I yelled, tears of absolute rage blurring my vision. I pointed at Vanessa, who was cowering behind the young officer, clutching a throw pillow to her chest. She's framing me. She set this up. Why would she do that? Baker asked quietly. I don't know. Because she's sick. Because she hates me. Officers, Baker called out, his voice sharp and authoritative. Execute a full search of the premises. Every room. I stood in the kitchen, trapped in a waking nightmare, as 4 police officers systematically tore my apartment apart. I watched Vanessa out of the corner of my eye. She was sitting on the sofa now, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with fake sobs. 45 minutes later, an officer walked out of my bedroom. He was wearing latex gloves. In his right hand, he held my gym bag. Detective, the officer said, found this shoved way back under the bed, behind some shoe boxes. He set the bag on the coffee table and unzipped it. Inside, wrapped in a dirty t-shirt, was the heavy steel lockbox. The officer used a tool to pry the simple latch open. Inside sat the velvet box. He flipped the lid. The Rothberg sapphire caught the morning light, glittering with a cold, mocking fire. No, I whispered, falling back against the wall. No, I didn't put that there. Detective Baker walked over to the table and looked down at the jewel. Then he turned to me. Chloe Davis, you're under arrest for grand larceny, he said, pulling a pair of cuffs from his belt. Wait, I begged, the room spinning. Please, look at my hands. Look at my fingers. Baker frowned. What? The safe combination, I babbled, my brain misfiring. I'm the only one who knows it, but my fingerprint. Someone could have copied it. I've been asleep. She has access to my phone. She could have used silicone. Miss Davis, we found the stolen property hidden in your personal bedroom, in your personal bag, Baker said, his voice hard. We also found a printed text exchange in your office trash can, outlining a deal to sell uncut sapphires to a buyer in Antwerp. You're done. A printed text? I gasped. I never printed anything like that. It's spoofed. She planted it. I looked at Vanessa. She slowly lowered her hands from her face. She looked at me over the detective's shoulder, and she smiled. A wide, triumphant, predatory smile. She had won. She had taken the perfect sister, the golden child of the real world, and burned her to the ground. I felt the cold steel of the handcuffs snap around my wrists. The metallic click echoed in the silent apartment like a gunshot. You're making a mistake, I said to the detective. my voice suddenly dropping to a dead, hollow calm. "Save it for the judge," he replied. As he turned me toward the door, my eyes caught the smoke detector on the ceiling of the hallway, the tiny red light of the battery indicator. My breath caught in my throat. I had been so blinded by panic, so utterly shattered by the betrayal, that my brain had completely short-circuited. Mike, the security guy, the peppermint smell, the cloud server. "Detective," I said. Stopping so abruptly, he yanked my arms. "Walk, Miss Davis." "Detective," I repeated, louder this time. I turned my head, locking eyes with Vanessa. Her smile faltered slightly. "Before you read me my rights, before you take me out of here in front of my neighbors, you need to look at my phone." "We'll be seizing your phone for evidence," Baker said, pushing me forward again. "No," I barked, planting my feet. "I have a cloud application on my phone. It links to a hidden high-resolution camera inside the smoke detector in my office. It records 24/7. It covers the safe, the keypad, and the biometric scanner." The room went completely silent. I looked at Vanessa. The blood had entirely vanished from her face. She looked like a ghost. "If I stole it," I said, my voice ringing with absolute lethal clarity, "you'll have me on 4K video doing it. But if I didn't, you're going to see exactly who walked into that room last night." Detective Baker didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his eyes flicking from my face to the ceiling, searching the white plastic shell of the smoke detector. "Officer Davies," Baker said, his voice flat, "get a chair. Look at that detector." The young officer dragged a dining chair down the hall. He climbed up, shining his heavy tactical flashlight directly into the slotted vents of the smoke alarm. He squinted, then he stepped down. "There's a pinhole lens behind the grate, Detective," he said, wired straight into the main power line. "It's professional." Baker looked back at me. Slowly, he reached out and took my phone from the kitchen counter where I had dropped it. He held it up to my face so the facial recognition could unlock it. The screen flashed open. "What's the app?" he asked. "It's a blue icon. Sentinel Cloud," I said. The steel of the cuffs was biting into my wrists, my hands numb and aching behind my back. "Open the vault log. Hit the date. Scrub to last night." Baker tapped the screen. The kitchen was so silent you could hear the hum of the refrigerator compressor. I didn't look at the phone. I looked at Vanessa. She was standing by the sofa, gripping the back of it so hard her knuckles were white. Her chest was heaving in short, shallow gasps. The theatrical tears were gone. What replaced them was the terrified, cornered look of an animal, realizing the trap had just snapped shut on its own leg. "No," Vanessa whispered, taking a step backward. "No, she's making it up. It's a trick. She's good with computers. She probably faked a video." "Shut up!" Baker snapped, not looking up from the screen. He was scrubbing his thick thumb across the timeline. He stopped, his eyebrows pulled together. He tapped a button, expanding the video to full screen, and turned the volume up. Faint, grainy audio drifted from the phone speakers. The sound of a door clicking open. Soft footsteps on hardwood. Baker tilted the phone so both his partner and I could see it. The black and white infrared footage was mercilessly clear. The timestamp read 3:14 a.m. On the screen, my office door swung open. Vanessa stepped into the frame. She was wearing my silk robe. In her right hand, she held a piece of clear packing tape. I realized instantly what it was. Last night, I had drank a glass of wine while working at the kitchen island. I had gone to bed and left the glass on the counter. She had lifted my thumbprint with a strip of shipping tape from the drawer. It was a stupid, sloppy internet hack, but on older optical biometric scanners, it worked just often enough. But the safe combination. How had she gotten that? The video answered for me. Vanessa didn't go to the safe right away. She walked over to the tall bookshelf near the window. She reached behind a stack of auction catalogs and pulled out her own iPhone. Bile rose in my throat. She had planted her phone on the shelf earlier in the day, propped up and recording. When I came in at 6 p.m. to lock up the sapphire, her phone had recorded me spinning the dial. She had literally filmed me locking my own vault. We watched in silence as the black and white Vanessa walked over to the safe. She squinted at her phone screen, carefully mimicking the combination. 34 left, 12 right, 82 left. The heavy steel bolts clunked open. On the video, Vanessa pulled the velvet box out of the lockbox. She opened it, stared at the jewel for a moment, and smiled. Then she reached into the pocket of the robe and pulled out a folded piece of printer paper, the fake text logs. She tossed them into my trash can. She closed the safe door, locked it, and slipped out of the room. The video ended. The app cycled back to the live feed of the empty office. Baker locked the phone screen. The click echoed through the room. He didn't say a word. He just walked around the kitchen island, grabbed me by the bicep, and turned me around. He pulled a small key from his belt and inserted it into the handcuffs. The metal popped open. I rubbed my wrists, the blood rushing back into my hands in a painful wave of heat. I felt lightheaded. I leaned against the marble counter, fighting the urge to throw up. "Davies," Baker said, his voice entirely drained of its previous hostility. It was cold now, professional and cold. Officer Davies walked toward the living room. Vanessa scrambled backward, tripping over the edge of the rug and falling hard onto the floor. "No, wait, you don't understand. She's horrible to me. She makes me feel like garbage." "Vanessa Davis," Davies said, grabbing her by the arm and hauling her roughly to her feet. "You have the right to remain silent." "She deserves it," Vanessa shrieked, fighting against his grip as he spun her around. Her voice was shrill, desperate, scraping against the walls. "You have everything, Chloe. You get the money, you get mom and dad's respect, you get the perfect life. I just wanted you to know what it felt like to lose." The cuffs ratcheted tightly around her wrists. She kicked at the coffee table, sending magazines sliding to the floor. "I'm your sister," she screamed, twisting her neck to look at me, her face flushed red and ugly with rage. "You're going to let them do this? Tell them to stop. Chloe, tell them it was a joke." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I stripped away the shared childhood memories, the Christmas mornings, the bruised knees and playground secrets. I looked at the woman standing in my living room. She wasn't my sister. She was a parasite who had tried to feed me to the wolves just to warm herself by the fire of my ruined life. "Officer," I said, my voice steady, sounding like it belonged to someone else entirely. "I want to press full charges. Grand larceny, breaking and entering, filing a false police report. Whatever else you can stack on." Vanessa stopped fighting. She went completely limp, her eyes widening in pure horror. "You're a monster," she whispered. "Get her out of my house," I said. I turned my back on her and stared out the window at the morning traffic below. I didn't turn around when she started sobbing. I didn't turn around when the front door opened. And I didn't turn around when the heavy wooden door clicked shut behind them. At exactly 8 a.m., my intercom buzzed. It was the armored transport team. I washed my face with ice-cold water, put on a fresh blazer, and walked out to the living room. The apartment felt different. The air was thinner. The lingering smell of Vanessa's perfume made my stomach churn, but I pushed it down. I walked into the office, retrieved the velvet box from the evidence bag the police had left on the table, after photographing everything, and placed it carefully into a new transport lockbox. I signed the manifest. The guards took the sapphire. My job was done. My reputation was intact. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID said Mom. I let it ring 3 times before I picked it up. I knew what was coming. I knew exactly how this script was written, because we had been rehearsing it my entire life. "Chloe," my mother said. Her voice was thick, wet with crying. "Chloe, please tell me this is a mistake. Your father is driving to the city right now. The police precinct just called us. They said Vanessa is in a holding cell." "She is," I said, leaning back against the kitchen counter. "I watched a pigeon land on the fire escape outside my window. She stole a $3 million jewel from my safe. Mom." "She hid it in my room," and she told the police I stole it because I was drowning in debt. She tried to frame me for a federal crime. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear my mother's ragged breathing. "She's sick, Chloe," my mother finally sobbed. "She's going through a terrible breakup. She's not in her right mind. You know how she gets when she's spiraling." "Spiraling is getting a bad haircut, Mom. Spiraling is maxing out a credit card on shoes. Meticulously planning to send your sister to prison for 20 years isn't spiraling. It's evil." "Don't use that word," my mother cried, her voice sharpening into a desperate anger. "She's your sister. She is blood. You have to call the police right now and tell them you made a mistake. Tell them she was just borrowing it. Tell them anything." "I can't do that. Chloe, if you don't drop these charges, they are going to ruin her life. She'll have a felony record. She'll never get a job. You will destroy her." I closed my eyes. The exhaustion was setting in, a deep, bone-aching weariness that made the phone feel like it weighed 50 pounds. "She ruined her own life," I said softly. "And she tried to ruin mine to make herself feel better. Where is the concern for my life, Mom?" If I hadn't had those cameras, I would be in handcuffs right now. I would lose my license, my career, everything I've built for 10 years. Does that matter to you at all? Or am I just the shield you expect Vanessa to hide behind? Family takes care of family, Chloe. You are the strong one. You can handle this. She can't handle prison. The mantra. There it was. The ultimate weapon they used to keep me in line. "I am strong," I agreed. "That's why I'm doing this. I love you, Mom. I love Dad. But if you try to pressure me into dropping these charges again, I will block both of your numbers, and you will never hear from me again." I'm done setting myself on fire to keep her warm. "You can't mean that," she whispered. "I do. I'll call you next week, once you've had time to process." I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for her to respond. I spent the rest of the day thoroughly cleaning the apartment. I threw away the stale Prosecco. I scrubbed the avocado stains off the granite. I took all the sheets off the guest bed, bagged them up, and threw them down the trash chute in the hallway. Then I called a locksmith. By 4 p.m., I had a heavy-duty deadbolt installed on the front door. I handed the locksmith a cash tip and locked the door behind him. The heavy metallic thud of the bolt sliding into place was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The trial is set for next spring. Vanessa's defense attorney reached out twice to negotiate a plea deal involving me dropping the grand larceny charge in exchange for a misdemeanor trespassing plea. I forwarded the emails to the district attorney with a single sentence attached: "I do not consent to a reduced plea." My parents didn't speak to me for 3 months. Dad finally called on Thanksgiving. He sounded older. He asked if I was eating well. He didn't mention Vanessa. He didn't have to. The silence where her name used to be was loud enough for both of us. They are paying for her defense, draining their retirement accounts to buy her a lighter sentence. That is their choice. I made mine. People think betrayal is loud. They think it happens in a screaming match or a dramatic confrontation in the rain, but it doesn't. Real betrayal is quiet. It's the sound of footsteps on a hardwood floor at 3 in the morning. It's the soft rip of packing tape. It's a smile in a brightly lit kitchen while the police put handcuffs on someone you're supposed to love. My apartment is quiet now. Some nights, when the wind rattles the windows, the silence feels a little heavy. I drink my wine. I read my auction catalogs. I check the locks on the safe. I am alone. And for the first time in my life, I am entirely safe. If you've ever had a toxic family member drain your energy, your finances, or your sanity, you know the hardest part isn't the betrayal, it's finally walking away. Don't wait until they burn your house down to realize they were playing with matches. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more raw, real stories. Protect your peace. See you next time.